Yes, very good afternoon, all of you. Welcome to the class. I hope I am audible.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, good afternoon. I hope I am audible, and I hope I am visible to all of you. I will be discussing Ranga's marriage in this class. I guess my voice is clear to all of you. Can you all listen to my voice? Am I audible to all of you? And
Yes, sir.
okay, fine. So I am now about to share the screen with you all. Okay, just a minute. Let me share the screen. Okay, wait. I guess some more students are about to join. Let me allow them. Yes. So hereby I am sharing the screen with you all. So it will be processed very shortly. Just please stay online. Since it is raining, so the network is a bit slow, but hopefully the class can be conducted. So yes, I have shared the screen, and now I am sharing the content with you all. So just hold on, let me scroll it upwards so that you all can see it, and please confirm me whether you all can see it or not. I guess it is visible to all of you, dear students. Can you
Yes,
see the
sir.
content? Okay, fine.
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it's a revision class, and I already posted the materials, and I have also given the Google form link in the Google Classroom. I will be sharing in WhatsApp also. So I want most of you to solve, and I want all of you to attempt all the questions. 15 MCQs are there. It will be a good practice before your exam. So just like yesterday, I will be sharing the link in WhatsApp, but in the Google Classroom it has already been shared. So if you want, you can do it from there also, and very cautiously you have to do it, okay, because it's only one response you can give. You can't re-edit it, so you have to press the key properly. Okay, that means the correct option you have to select it very carefully, because after selecting you can't change it. Okay, that is something very important. Okay, I guess there is someone on the line. Let me allow. Okay, so I am moving on once again. So first of all, Ranga's marriage, a very interesting chapter, and a chapter that we all like, right? So I will be just discussing some points. I will be highlighting some points because it's a revision class, and of course I will be interacting with you all, and I hope you will be also interacting with me. If there is any problem in the course of my discussion, do let me know. I will be clarifying the doubts. Okay, now about the author, it is written by Masti Venkatesha Iyengar. Now popularly he is known as Masti. He was an administrator, professor, and a popular writer in Kannada language. Remember, he was a very popular writer in the Kannada language, and he was also he received the Gyanpith Award, also highest literary award in our country. And right from early on in life, he wrote both in English and in Kannada. Remember one thing, he wrote both in English and in Kannada. Okay, Kannada was his mother tongue. His literary works include novels, poetry, drama, criticism, journalism, and short stories. And remember, Ranga's marriage is one of his famous short story. Okay, he has written novels, poetry, drama, criticism. He has also done a bit of journalism, and he has written short stories also. Okay, so Ranga's marriage is a short story. Now that is all about the author, and now I am scrolling a bit down. Now I will be discussing a bit regarding the synopsis of this particular chapter. So as you know, the story highlights life in Indian villages at a time when child marriages were common. This is something very important, dear students. I like to highlight that this story was set during the British rule in our country. Okay, pre-independence era. You can say pre-independence era, and at that time child marriages were very much common. I have highlighted right now, I guess you can see child marriages were very much rampant in our country during that time, and we find here an instance of child marriage also. Now Ranga'S marriage is an interesting account of how a person manipulates a young boy. Remember, the person who is manipulating, he is the narrator of the story, and I guess you know his name by this time. His name is Shama, and the one who is being manipulated is a young boy, and he is the main hero of this particular story. His name is Ranga. Now the person is manipulating a young boy in order to get married to an 11-year-old girl. That 11-year-old girl is none other than Ratna. Okay, I guess you all know by this time, and I already highlighted this part, that child marriage. Why? Because we haven't got the age of Ranga. It is nowhere written what exactly was the age of Ranga. We don't know, isn't it? We can presume that he might be 18, 19, or might be 20. So we can speculate, we can presume, but we don't know exactly. But the age of Ratna has been mentioned 11 years old. Very important for your MCQ. And another important thing I told you, that this story was written during the pre-independence era, or during the so-called British Raj. Okay, during that time only it was been written. See, the story dates back to the early days of the British rule, when the English usage wasn't so common. Remember, another important thing that we find, that the author himself narrated in the course of the story, that few people used to speak in English. But after the return of Ranga from Bangalore, where he went for higher studies, and after 6 months he returned, then English became popular, and during the weekends the people, they used to communicate in English language only. Okay, so but previously, before Ranga went to Bangalore for studies, at that time hardly few people knew English. Okay, English was not so popular at that time, but English became popular when Ranga returned back from Bangalore after completing his studies, and he was the first one from the village who went to Bangalore for higher studies, and he paved the way for the others to study there. Okay, now I guess up to this it is clear to all of you. Is there any doubt, any questions up to this? Any sort of doubt you can ask me, or is it clear to all of you? Shall I move on to the next page?
It's clear.
Oh, okay, it's clear. Okay, fine. So I am moving on right now. Please confirm me, is it visible to all of you? So now his homecoming, I guess it is visible. So remember one thing, his homecoming after 6 months, it was a special event, because all the villagers, they gathered around his house. Okay, they wanted to see whether there was any change in Ranga or not. And when they noticed that there was no change in him, they were very disappointed, and they left the place. But initially, when Ranga came all the way from Bangalore, it seems that they all gathered around that place to have a look, and also some of them even touched Ranga to see whether he had changed or not. And when they found out that Ranga was still very much traditional, Ranga haven't forgotten his cultural roots, so they decided to disperse. But initially they all gathered around his place. Okay, see this line, it is written, his homecoming after 6 months became an event for celebration, with curious onlookers gathering outside his home to see how much city life has changed him. So they all gathered around his house to see that whether he had changed or whether he looked exactly the same. Now they are surprised to see that English education has not corrupted their old Ranga. I am highlighting this part, dear students. This is very important. English education haven't corrupted Ranga, and this line is also important. And still conforms to the age-old traditions and customs. That means Ranga is still very much into age-old traditions and customs. He still believes in all these things. So English education or education in a big city, it haven't corrupted Ranga at all. Okay, but one thing that was noticeable in Ranga, that was noticeable by the narrator Shama. Shama is a matchmaker, as you know. And what was the thing that was noticeable? That Ranga's views about marriage, it had underwent a change, sea change we can say. Ranga's views about marriage, Ranga's views about life, it had underwent a change. Wait, I guess there is someone on the line, so please hold on, let me allow. Okay, so I think Priyanka joined us right now. Priyanka, very good afternoon, welcome to the class. Okay, so let us move on. See this line. Ranga, however, has his personal views about marriage. Remember, his views about marriage, it was ultra modern. I repeat one more time. His views about marriage was ultra modern, very progressive, and he was in favor of love marriage. He was not in favor of traditional marriage, he was in favor of love marriage. See, the narrator on his part decides to get the boy married after hearing the same. He settles for an immature girl of 11 Ratna for Ranga, and with the help of Shastri's astrology, he goes about the task of matchmaking. See, initially, Ranga was not in favor of traditional marriage. Why? Because he wanted to marry an old girl so that the sense of companionship and the sense of compatibility can stay intact. Okay, that was his main reason, because he was he used to think that if he marries a young girl, obviously there might be a communication gap. So that was the reason Ranga always wanted to marry an old girl, okay, or to say in other words, a mature girl. That was the main thing. So it has been an open challenge been accepted by the narrator. The narrator is Shama, and he had taken a challenge that whatever it takes, he will get Ranga married in a very traditional manner. And obviously his trump card was none other than Ratna, and obviously with the help of the village astrologer Shastriji, eventually he was successful in settling Ranga, and eventually he was successful in getting Ranga married to Ratna happily. Okay, just a minute, I guess again there is someone on the line. Is there someone? No. Okay, so let us move on. Eventually the two get married and settle down happily. Okay, yes, I heard that time. Okay, let's see. Yes, I guess there is someone. Yes, okay, so let us move on then. So finally the two means Ranga and Ratna, finally they got married, and finally what happened, they settled down happily. So, and we find that the story ends with a happy ending. Okay, so is there any doubt up to this? I have completed the synopsis part also, highlighting the important points with you all. Is there any doubt you want to ask, any questions, anyone, or shall I move on to the theme? So yes, Prerna and others, any doubts up to this? So
No, sir.
okay, fine. So I'm moving on to the theme. Okay, so just a minute, I think some more students are there. Yes, so yes, now the theme is very important, and in the theme we get to know about that English language that was considered as the priceless commodity. So see, the story holds a mirror to the society in villages a long time back, but because I told you, if we consider the time, okay, the time period, so obviously it was during the pre-independence era, that is the time when the Britishers were ruling our country. The story was set during that time, and as I told you at the very beginning only, child marriages were very much rampant during those days. Okay, a time when people did not know English. Hardly few of them can communicate in English, and here we find that the narrator was also, he had no idea about English. It was Ranga who came all the way from Bangalore after completing his studies. He had some knowledge about English, but we find that few of the villagers, they know English. Not everyone. Everyone was not well versed with English, not even the narrator also. According to the author, the priceless commodity, the English language, was not so widespread in villages. It also stresses on how astrologers held a place of reverence in society. Obviously, apart from considering English as a priceless commodity, we get to know that English was not so widespread in the villages, but later, with the arrival of Ranga, after completing his higher studies, after spending 6 months in a big city like Bangalore and coming back to Hosahalli, it seems that slowly and slowly among the local villagers, English became popular. And we get to know about astrologers. Okay, obviously they are represented by Shastriji, and obviously we get to know that astrologers, they were being considered as very respectable people. Okay, and obviously they are held at high esteem because they are given a very high place in the society. We get to know about that one also. But moreover, another important thing that we get to know is obviously the theme of marriage. And obviously, since we know that the narrator himself was actually a potential matchmaker, as you know, so obviously he will be dealing with the theme of marriage only. And the theme of marriage is very much prevalent. It is found in this chapter. Okay, the theme of marriage. He depicts the role neighbors and well-wishers had to play in arranged marriages. Okay, obviously we find the role of the neighbors, we find the role of the villagers. Most importantly, we find a very important role being played by the local village astrologer by the name of Shastriji. He played a very important role. And last but not the least, the entire thing was controlled. The entire plan was been given a proper shape, and finally the entire plan got executed. All these things were possible by the planning of the narrator. He was the one who had taken a challenge in his mind that by hook or by crook he will get Ranga married to Ratna. Okay, he will get Ranga married to Ratna, and also in a traditional manner. Okay, so that is something we get to know. And apart from that, we find in this particular story, Ranga'S marriage, if we consider it from a critical perspective, if we analyze the story from a critical perspective, we find that there is a conflict. There is a conflict we find between traditional thought and modern thought. I repeat one more time, we find in Ranga'S marriage a conflict, a tussle we find between traditional thought and modern thought. Remember, the author is the one who represents the traditional thought, and obviously Ranga represents the modern thought. He was academically qualified also. He was progressive minded, and his viewpoints particularly regarding marriage, is very much progressive, very much ultra modern, something that is very difficult to digest for the community members during the pre-independence era in a South Indian village in India. That is something we find here also. That is the reason the narrator Shama, he decided to convince Ranga to marry in a traditional way. And of course, as I told earlier, that his trump card was none other than Ratna. And what a big turn of events we find, because when Ranga saw Ratna for the very first time, it was love at first sight from Ranga's perspective. Okay, Ranga went on liking Ratna, and that was what the author, that is the narrator Shama, he wanted. He actually wanted Ranga to like Ratna. Okay, and obviously we find at the very end, though Ranga possessed his modern thought, his ultra modern views related with life and marriage, but we found at the very end that he followed the traditional thought and married. And married whom? And married Ratna. Okay, that is something we find at the end. Okay, see, the conflict occurs when Ranga, against his rationality, falls in love with Ratna, an 11-year-old girl, and finally gets married to her. Obviously, he was the one who was propagating his ultra modern views about marriage, but ultimately we find that he surrendered himself to the traditional system of marriage and married Ratna, who was an 11-year-old girl. Okay, that means finally in the clash between the traditional marriage and the modern, ultra modern aspect of marriage, we find that finally it is the victory, or finally the traditional views about marriage. Okay, it's a victory of traditional views about marriage that we find at the very end. Though Ranga had in his mind ultra modern views about marriage, but we find that the moment he saw Ratna, it seems that he had forgotten every other ideologies related with marriage that he had in his mind, okay, that he harbored in his mind for long. And it seems that he followed the way that was specially been designed by the narrator Shama, and finally Shama's plan got executed. Okay, I guess there is someone on the line, so please hold on, let me allow. Okay, so now let me move on. Now the characterization, but before the characterization I discuss the theme with you all. So dear students, is there any doubt regarding the theme, or is it clear to all of you? If you have any questions in your mind, it's well appreciated. Please, if you have any questions, you can ask me. Yes, dear students, any doubts? Please speak up, please interact with me. Is there any doubts you want to clarify?
No, sir.
Okay, fine. Okay, so let us move on to characterization. Now Shama's character, Shama is the main narrator. I have in detail described his character, but initially I have given some points related with his character. And see, Hosahalli, the village, has also been considered as a character. Now you might be thinking that it is not a living character. Now every time in order to define a character, it doesn't mean that a character should be a living character, because Hosahalli plays a very important role, because the entire chapter, the entire story revolves around this place. And obviously many things we get to know about the village Hosahalli from the narrator's point of view. We get to know many things. So obviously if we consider it from that aspect, then definitely Hosahalli, the village, is also a character. Okay, so let us move on. First important thing is Shama. In detail regarding Shama I have discussed, but let me just give you a slight viewpoint about the character of Shama. See, according to the story, the narrator is a very simple and kind-hearted person. But remember one thing, the narrator is very clever also, because what is his profession? I guess you all know his profession is that he was a potential matchmaker. So obviously he has to be clever, and because of his cleverness only, he was able to convince Ranga, he was able to manipulate Ranga to marry an 11-year-old girl. Okay, and obviously not only that, he manipulated Ranga in such a way that Ranga went on believing in the traditional system of marriage, though he was totally against it at the very beginning. We find when the narrator had a conversation with him after he came back after completing his higher studies from Bangalore, isn't it? Okay, now you see, he has a lot of admiration for his village. Yes, obviously we find that the narrator has a deep love for his village and knows even the smallest details about his village, and even the smallest details also about his village he knows it. Okay, and we get to know about many characters also. We get to know about the village Hosahalli. It is all possible because the narrator had described it at length. And remember, though the main story is related with Ranga'S marriage, dear students, but as you know, to be very honest with you all, he drifted from the main course of the story. He drifted from the main course of the story and went on, stating many things about his village, and then again he came back to the main marriage part. Okay, that is, he came back to Ranga'S part, but he gave, ample space in his writing related with the village. The narrator gave ample space in his writing. He had stated many things about Hosahalli, right? And then again he came back to the main topic, that is Ranga'S marriage. He drifted for a time being, we know that. Okay, so having said that, Hosahalli is indeed a character, and the narrator is extremely proud of its native village, obviously its topography, its geography, its flora and fauna. Okay, the narrator is very much in love with his village, we find. But at the same time, he again came back to his main discussion, that is Ranga'S marriage. But having said that, as I repeated earlier, he talked at length related with his village. Okay, now in detail the character of Shyama, that is the narrator. You know that he was a matchmaker by profession, so obviously one important thing used to be in his mind every time. And what is that important thing that used to be in his mind? Marriage. Okay, how to get Ranga married in a traditional manner. And already he had successfully solemnized 9 marriages. He wanted to successfully conduct a marriage of Ranga also, but obviously in this case he had taken the help of the other villagers also. Particularly he had taken the help of the village astrologer by the name of Sastriji. Okay, see now, the narrator seems to have a clever perception and is a good judge of people. He is a good judge of people. He likes Ranga for the fact that the boy has not forgotten his roots. Okay, now why he liked Ranga? Because Ranga came all the way from Bangalore after completing his studies, and the important thing is that he found out that Ranga did his namaskara in a very traditional manner, as you know, because by this time, dear students, I do feel like you have read your NCERT text very carefully. You know that Ranga did his namaskara in a very traditional manner. He even touched the feet of the narrator. Okay, see, in spite of city education, Ranga touches his feet. Ranga was traditional in his outlook. Okay, Ranga's good character makes Shyama decide that he will not let the boy settle elsewhere. Now it was a target that Shyama, being a potential matchmaker, he had taken a target at the back of his mind that whatever it takes, I will not allow this boy to settle somewhere else. I want him to marry someone from our village only, and that is the reason Ratna was being selected. Okay, and obviously, as I told earlier when I was discussing the introduction part and the synopsis part, that Ratna was been taken as a trump card. Okay, and Ratna was been used also as a trump card. By whom? By the narrator. And it seems that the trump card actually was very much successful, because Ranga at the very first stage only, when he saw Ratna for the very first time, he fell in love with Ratna. We get to know about in all his ideologies about marrying a mature girl, okay, compatibility, companionship, no misunderstanding, and all those things he had forgotten. The moment he saw Ratna, all his ultra modern views about marriage got aborted. For a time being, he had forgotten all those things. He had a very ultra modern view about marriage, as we know by this time. those marriage, ultra modern views of the marriage, he went on harboring in his life, but now he went on forgetting about all those things. Okay, see now. Then he begins to hatch a plot in order to get Ranga married and settle in the village. Now this is very, very important. He decided, he was the mastermind behind everything, behind manipulating Ranga, behind convincing Shastriji. Okay, he was the mastermind behind everything. Obviously he wanted to satisfy his own intention also, and we know that by profession he is a matchmaker, so obviously he had some advantage on his side also. Okay, he had some benefit also, that was also can be considered as a reason, isn't it, dear students? Now see, it is written, okay, he begins to hatch a plot in order to get Ranga married and settle in the village. Obviously he is the mastermind behind everything. Very cunningly he crafts an opportunity to make Ranga and Ratna meet. Very cleverly he settled the entire thing. He crafted an opportunity to make Ranga and Ratna meet, interact with one another. Okay, and that was also pre-planned. Okay, the meeting of Ranga and Ratna, dear students, for the very first time, that was also pre-planned. Okay, see now, I am scrolling down. Thereafter, he conspires with the astrologer and gets Ranga thinking about marriage. Now one important thing is that he gave enough evidence and hints to Shastriji. Now credit is there if we consider Shastriji also, because Shastriji developed all the hints. Being an astrologer, obviously he got all the information, so he just had to do a bit of acting. That he did. But at the same time, Shastriji developed on the hints that was been given to him by the narrator Shama, because in the end we find that the two got married, that is Ranga and Ratna, the two got married. Thus Shama comes across as a benevolent man. Benevolent means kind-hearted, but remember, he was very clever, and dear students, he was very shrewd also. That also we should remember. He was benevolent, at the same time he was very shrewd also, who wants everybody to be happy. Yes, he wants everybody to be happy, and his profession was that of a matchmaking profession, so he wanted to do his profession properly also. Even though he is cunning in some cases, the reader still finds him interesting. Obviously he is a bit clever, he seems to be a bit cunning also sometimes, but the readers had taken it in a very positive way. So his character is a likable character, his character is a very interesting character, and from the very beginning, with the narrative power, okay, that we find obviously written by Venkatesha Iyengar, the narrative style is so unique that, dear students, I think you also feel like that from the very beginning we developed an emotional connection with that place, that particular village Hosahalli. We developed an emotional connection with the narrator also, and obviously with Ranga also, because we are able to see the other characters as been described by the narrator. This is something very interesting, because we find that the other characters as been described by the narrator. We get to feel about the other characters as been described by the narrator. Remember, this is a very important thing. And despite the other characters are being described by the narrator, even then also we try to develop, we find an emotional connection. We develop an emotional connection with the other characters. Okay, whether it might be Shastriji, whether it might be the doctor Gundavatta, whether it might be the village Hosahalli as a whole, whether we consider the important character Ranga, whether we consider Ratna, we develop some sort of emotional connection with them. And of course, the narrator Shama, the matchmaker, the main conspirator behind the marriage of Ranga and Ratna, he is the lovable character. Despite he looks a very clever and shrewd and cunning sometimes, but overall, if we judge his character, indeed, dear students, he is a loving character. Okay. Now, any doubts up to this? Any questions you want to ask me, because it's a revision class, so if there is any doubt you can clarify it. Yes, any doubts, any sort of confusion is there, dear students, or shall I move on, because there is Ranga'S character also that I want to discuss. Any doubts, anyone? You can speak up and say if there is any confusion anywhere up to this. Yes, any confusion anywhere?
No, sir, no
Okay,
doubt.
okay, fine. Okay, thank you. So let us move on then. Ranga was the son of the village accountant. Now, as you know, he had gone to Bangalore for higher studies, and he returned from Bangalore after 6 months. Okay, and at the very beginning, what happened, as you know, as he came, all the villagers gathered around his house to see whether they can notice or whether they can see any changes in him. But ultimately, no changes were found, and that means he was not only well educated but well mannered, but he was also culturally and traditionally well grounded. I repeat, not only he turned out to be well educated and well mannered, but culturally he was well grounded. Okay, a traditional kid, he was quite different from the other boys of his age. Remember, he was very different. He was very traditional, very educated, very progressive. He was very generous and very considerate also. And remember, though he was educated in a big city, there would have been a possibility that there would have been a change in his mindset, outlook related with the others, but he was humble as ever. Obviously, there was some changes in his outlook, in his views related with marriage. Particularly, we find that he harbored ultra modern views related with life and marriage. Okay, see, not want to rush into marriage, he wanted to settle down with a sufficiently old girl so that they would have they would not have a communication gap. That was the reason he wanted to marry a mature girl, so that there may not be a communication gap. Okay, that was his views about marriage, and definitely he was not in favor of arranged marriages. He wanted a love marriage. This is a very important line. He wanted a love marriage in which the couple would know each other thoroughly. But ultimately, it was by seeing Ratna, it was love at first sight from his perspective. As I told you all, he fell prey to an arranged marriage, and that too with an 11-year-old girl. And we should remember the age of Ratna specifically been mentioned, 11-year-old girl. And that is the reason one of the most important theme of this chapter is child marriage. Okay, now regarding the regarding the character of Ratna is also a very important character. So we get to know that after her parents' death, she was staying with her uncle Ramarao, and she knew to play the veena and the harmonium, and she can sing sweetly also. Okay, and obviously her sweet and endearing nature made Shama choose her as Ranga'S bride. It was a good choice, and a good choice was made by Shama. Okay, and Shastriji, we know he was the village astrologer, and one important thing I like to say here is this one. Okay, this part is very important, that the hints given by the narrator were skillfully developed by him. He is the one who is able to get Ranga'S confession about being in love with Ramarao's niece Ratna. He was the one who skillfully developed on the points given by the narrator Shama. And most important thing is that he developed on that, and he was the one who successfully was able to get the confession of love from Ranga related with Ramarao's niece, that is Ratna. And last of all, before to end this particular discussion of this live class, I want to sum up the title. I want to say something about the title, so please stay online. Let me just take 2 minutes more, 2-3 minutes more. I just want to take that. The title is very appropriate, and obviously it sums up the theme of the story. And what is the theme of the story? The theme of the story is related with Ranga'S marriage. Though initially we find that some portion at the very beginning, the author has drifted from Ranga'S marriage and went on telling about Hosahalli, went on describing the village Hosahalli. We get to know about it, but overall the main story is related with Ranga'S marriage. Okay. And we know that Ranga, who was reluctant to marry, initially reluctant, I guess you know the meaning, unwilling, but later when he saw Ratna, he decided to marry Ratna. And obviously the entire thing was a plan. The plan was been conspired by whom? By none other. It was been he was the main mastermind behind this plan, is none other than the narrator. And obviously the plan that was been formed or developed by him, okay, finally it was executed successfully, that we get to know. Because what we get to know, Ranga and Ratna happily married, and obviously we get to know, thanks to the narrator's efforts, all the incidents thus contribute to the central theme. And not only that, we get to know the writer presents the workings of the young educated Indian's mind and heart. Obviously, because we don't find here Ranga to be dumb. Okay, we find Ranga here to be very progressive, very rational. Okay, his character has been projected in that way. But obviously in the matter of love, when he saw Ratna, he had forgotten everything, all his ultra-modern views about marriage that I already referred earlier. But having said that, if you see the character of Ranga, he is not like a dumb villager. He is not like that. He is very rational, very intelligent, and most importantly, he is educated also. Moreover, we find that the narrator wants to wean Ranga away from the fantasy of love marriage. Wants to wean. See the spelling, W-E-A-N. That means the narrator wanted Ranga to forget about love marriage. Okay, wanted to divert his mind from love marriage towards traditional marriage. See, by arousing his interest and fascination for the young Ratna, he makes Ranga agree to marry her, and thus we find that they were happily married. And at the end we find that already they had a son, and both Ranga and Ratna, they are expecting their second child also. So the story ends on a happy note. See, Ranga's one condition for marriage is fulfilled. Obviously he loved Ratna, he married Ratna, so that particular aspect has been fulfilled. But other condition that remained unfulfilled, that is, he wanted to marry a mature girl, that remains unfulfilled. Okay, that was never fulfilled. And remember that black hole tragedy? Okay, I was discussing about it. Remember it, the context was that all the villagers gather around the house. Okay, and seeing that particular condition, it has been referred as the black hole tragedy. So you will be reading this part. Actually, the history says that the troops of Sirajudullah, the Nawab of Bengal, held British prisoners of war for 3 days in 1756, and many of them died of suffocation and heat exhaustion. That is the historical part. And here the black hole tragedy has been stated because all the villagers, they gather around the house, and it was very difficult to accommodate them inside the house of Ranga. So that particular incident has been compared by the writer or by the narrator with the infamous, I won't be saying famous because there is some controversy regarding this, infamous black hole tragedy. Okay, so I hope up to this it is very much clear. So I have revised the chapter. I don't feel like there is any doubt. Is there any doubt at the back of your mind? You can ask me. Is there any doubt, or the chapter is clear to all of you? Have you all understood the chapter? It is clear to all of you? Okay, fine. So Ranga's marriage has been done. 15 MCQ questions are there. I will be uploading the link in your WhatsApp. Please kindly do it, and obviously you can evaluate yourself. Self-evaluation you can do. Obviously automatically you can get the answers, and automatically you can get the marks. How many marks you got, you can automatically get that one also. Okay, thank you everyone. Thank you for a patient hearing, and thank you all for interaction. I hope you all liked the class. Okay, stay well everyone. Take care everyone. Have a nice day, and see you again. Thank you everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.